If you're looking for a roguelite on the eShop, you won't be hard-pressed to find a slew of quality offerings. However, if you're looking for a shake-up to the traditional dungeon crawling formula, Moonlighter has you covered. Sure, exploring dungeons, slaying monsters, and gathering materials are a driving force, but during downtime, you'll be tending to the shop as you sell your newly acquired wares. Dungeon crawling and shop management go hand in hand as you aim not to only upgrade your gear, but your shop and town as well. The continuous loop of collecting items, selling them for a profit, and then upgrading your store is a rewarding one, and it kept me driving back into the dungeons just one more time. The protagonist of Moonlighter is a young man named Will, who is a merchant with a desire to become a hero. While his days are tied up running the store, his nights are filled with dangerous expeditions into the local dungeons. Waiting within each dungeon is a boss who holds a key, and retrieving the 4 keys to unlock the final area is the ultimate goal. However, traversing through each dungeon's 3 floors to get to the boss proves to be a tricky feat. Dungeons are procedurally generated, so each visit is different from the last. Much like The Binding of Isaac, you'll enter a room and have to clear out the enemies before moving on to the next, as you look for the exit to the next floor. You'll have the option to pay a fee and warp out of the dungeon if you find yourself in a pinch or have become overburdened with items. For a higher fee, you can open a portal to return back to the exact spot, which comes in handy the deeper you get. If death happens to fall upon you, the option to either start back at the first floor or exit the dungeon completely is presented, but it comes at the expense of losing most of what you've picked up along the way. When it comes to the combat, it's downright simple, but not in a bad way. You have 3 tools in your arsenal: a standard attack, a special attack, and a dodge roll. The standard attack, when used 3 times in a row, rattles off a combo, with the last hit doing noticeably more damage. Where the variety in the combat comes is with the 5 different weapon types, which includes a few melee options as well as a bow for long distance attacks. You can have 2 weapons equipped at a time and with the press of a button switch on the fly. It is fun to test out the different weapons, but I almost always found myself reverting back to the bow due to its range. With the number of ways to attack being limited, much has to do with learning the best way to approach different enemy types. I found myself struggling early with certain enemies, but after learning the proper timing, I was able to overcome them. There will be the occasional room that's downright brutal, and bosses are quite challenging, but I found the difficulty to be tough but fair. As you progress through the dungeons, you'll quickly acquire a backpack full of materials. These materials are useful for crafting and for selling to make that sweet, sweet gold. When returning back to town, you'll drop into the shop and place what you picked up on your travels for sale. Where the fun kicks in is setting these prices and paying attention to the customer's emoticon reactions to those prices. If they look disgusted, you know you set the price too high, but if their eyes light up with gold, you're missing out on some serious profits. The trick is to find the reaction of a pleased face, knowing it's fairly priced for both you and the patron. Of course, this can be tricky when a few customers are shopping at once, or if you happen to look away while the reactions pop up. But fortunately, a log is kept that you can reference when pricing. However, the downside is having to constantly open your menu and cycle through some somewhat lengthy lists. In addition to monitoring the reactions, you'll have to keep an eye out for thieves who are out to steal your hard-earned items. Now, what are you going to do with all that gold you accumulate from your sales? Well, there are 2 options: reinvest in your shop and town, or upgrade your gear. You'll absolutely need to do both, but how you go about it is left open to your discretion. Upgrading your gear requires gold and certain materials, some of which are difficult to find, but it will increase your HP and damage, making it much easier to work your way through the dungeons. I did find myself having to grind dungeons to get enough gold for some of the later game upgrades, since the costs become quite staggering. Investing in your shop and town opens up new paths to make even more money, and invite other shops to move into town. As your shop levels up, new options such as hiring an employee becomes available. There is even a broker who will come to town whom you can invest with and hope to see high returns, but naturally this comes at the risk of losing your money. Moonlighter both looks and sounds great. The art style is charming and each dungeon has its own distinct look and feel. The soundtrack is great, and I especially like that the music shifts slightly when interacting with different townsfolk. For the most part, it ran well in both docked and handheld mode, with only a few minor frame rate issues. More concerning were the occasional instances where I found myself forced to restart the game. One of my portals back to the dungeon kept freezing on the loading screen, and another time I went to transition to another floor and was stuck behind the door. It does autosave when entering and leaving town, so I didn't lose much progress, but it was still disappointing to have to redo a few floors. The beauty of Moonlighter is how seamlessly it blends dungeon crawling with a store simulator. Every action you take, whether it be in the dungeons collecting materials or in the shop earning gold to spend on upgrades, helps to move you further along towards the end goal. There were a few technical hiccups that cropped up from time to time, and the last few upgrades needed a bit of grinding to unlock. But despite that, I constantly found myself falling victim to the classic, just one more run.